Great, thanks.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Bagel U's KHN's wonderful monthly educational gathering. And I want to thank Jerry and Abraham for giving me the opportunity to speak with everyone. And special welcome to all the poets, my poet friends and colleagues, both here from around the greater Philadelphia area and also from Israel. So special, and also from Israel and editors of Nashim. Nashim is the Journal of Jewish Women's Studies and Gender Issues, and it comes out of Israel and it's English language. So special welcome to Catherine Hellerstein, Debbie Greneman. Debbie, welcome back to the old neighborhood. Debbie went to Soulberry School. And Renee coming in from Israel as well. So special welcome to everyone. So my name is Lynn Levin. I have a fond place in my heart for Kehilat Hanahar. I live in Southampton, and I'm a poet and a writer, and my newest book is House Parties, collection of short stories, and I'll be reading one of those short stories on the February Bagel U. So, and I also want to thank the Reconstructionist magazine Evolve for publishing my essay, What is it like to be a Jewish poet post-October 7? So it is now day 8 of the peace process, and hostilities in the Israel-Hamas war have paused. Aid trucks are entering Gaza. The hostages are beginning to be freed, and one can hope first and foremost that somehow there will be a lasting peace, and at least in my opinion, a stable two-state solution so that Israelis and Palestinians can live their lives.
Peace. Here's the deal.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you breakfast.
Then
you have to go outside.
Okay.
All right.
So peace is more important than poetry, but the war has also been carried out on the literary front. During the Israel-Hamas war, Jewish poets and writers have been writing at a time of grief amid destruction and the deaths of innocents. During the Israel-Hamas war, pro-Palestinian poets and writers have been writing at a time of grief amid destruction and deaths of innocents. But the literary climate for these two groups has been vastly different. Zionism has been routinely mischaracterized and maligned. The Jewish right to self-determination has been denied by many, and the war deaths in Gaza, terrible as they are, shockingly terrible, have been labeled as an intentional genocide. Rhetoric has been extreme and even hateful. Voices sympathetic to Israel, and often Jewish voices in general, have been excluded, canceled, and boycotted by everyone from Islamists to the far left to the literary mainstream. Only a small group of magazines dare to publish poems by Jews, and outside of Israel, even fewer dare to publish poems about the atrocity of October 7. On the positive side, a crop of new literary magazines has sprung up to give a forum for Jewish voices and voices sympathetic to Israel. Among these, I want to mention a special forthcoming literary supplement to Nashim that will publish some of these voices. Thank you, editors, and maybe later in the Zoom, you can say some words about that. Regarding the current situation, I'll start by speaking about several mainstream literary magazines and what's going on with them. So one of them is Poets and Writers, which is a large circulation magazine that includes profiles of writers, articles about craft, information about prizes and places to submit your literary work. Poets and Writers promotes the Palestinian cause and seems to sidestep the Jewish side of the crisis. I'm going to hold up a magazine here. This is the November-December 2024 Poets and Writers, and it features a big profile about the Gazan poet Mossab Abu Toha, and also some a pro-Palestine literary prompt in here. And Mossab Abu Toha is a very, very good poet, and he's writing very important poems about the war deaths and the devastation. And Mossab Abu Toha also has been edited carefully and lovingly by a lot of women Israeli poets, and his poems are all over the place and profiles. Poets and writers, the New Yorker, online blogs, radio programs, and so on and so forth. Yes, he should have a lot of exposure. He does important stuff, but the Israeli side is not shown. That's ignored. Then we get to the next issue. That's the 2025 January-February issue of Poets and Writers. This is here. And it has a major essay in there called Decolonize the Novel by a writer named Podar that includes such rhetoric as the US-backed genocide perpetrated by the Israeli state against Palestinians and decries hegemonic forms of storytelling. So again, this is what's going on here. Another major organization that serves the writing community is the Association of Writers and Writing Programs, also known as AWP. And AWP has a giant conference every year attended by 10,000 to 12,000 poets and writers and students in MFA programs and all kinds of literary people. And the 2024 conference in Kansas City found a number of panelists electing to begin their presentations with statements about Gaza, and anti-Israel protests took place in the conference book fair and outside the convention center. Jewish writers, including the organization Yetzirah, a Hearth for Jewish poets, protested. It sounds as if AWP listened. The poet Amy Small McKinney has done an in-depth look at the Jewish and Palestinian panels for the 2025 AWP conference. Amy, welcome. Can you share your findings? I know you did a really in-depth study of this.
Sure. So the initial good news is that when you look at the Jewish panels, including Jewish Book Council and not Jewish and Book Council, we have what I estimate to be 10. The reason I say estimate is because there's two panels whose language I had trouble deconstructing or understanding what their agenda was. There's also about the same amount of Palestinian and one Arab. They just say Arab in coordination with Black and Indigenous creators, as well as womanist, queer, trans, and creatives. And that's about 7. I want to just mention that language would me because it kind of suggests that there are no Jewish, trans, queers, womanists. It was a little confusing to me, to be honest, more than confusing. Some of the language that there are 2 panels, which I loved. They're Jewish Muslim panels. And they use words. They're almost the only panel who uses these words, understanding. And they use the word anti-Semitic and Islamophobia. They also use words like spiritual or multiplicity. There's other words I notice in the Jewish panels, joy, understanding, as I said. The language of the other panels, including the Jewish non-Zionists, include genocide, many times, weaponization, colonialism, and diaspora. One Jewish group uses that word, but mostly it's used by Palestinian and Jewish anti-Zionists. Let's see. There are 2. Do I still have time, Lynn?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you've only begun.
Okay. There were 2 panels I struggled with, trying to figure out what they were really saying. One is called Our Own Name. And some of the language in their blurb about what to expect. How can contemporary poetry and prose writers trouble and disrupt association, conflations, and assumptions about Jewish identity? Okay. How can they grapple with the possibilities and limitations of writing about diasporic, Jewish lives beyond stereotypes, assimilation, and Zionism? And then there's another line that talks about confronting the weaponization of anti-Semitism. So that's one of the Jewish panels with language like that. Another one is called Bad Belonging, Jewish and Muslim Poets Writing Against and Into Community. And some of their language it says, what does it mean to write poems as a bad Jew or a bad Muslim at this time? Tensions between belonging to a cultural group while making choices as poets that refuse or challenge that sense of communal belonging. I would want to go to that were I there, because I'd want to understand what they're really saying. So basically, I heard some attempts at softer language. There were, oh, by the way, there were 4 Jewish Book Council panels, and one is the combination Jewish and Muslim, and 1 Jewish Book Award event. I think it's important to know this. And there were 6 panels of Jewish panels that were not part of the Jewish Book Council. So I thought that was pretty impressive from what I heard last year. So they're about equal. The Palestinian panels are many of them are in coordination with Armenian along with Lebanese and Iranian. So this suggests that Israel is equal to Turkey. And though it doesn't, because the Palestinians and the Armenians are talking about genocide, talking about colonialization. So the language of the anti-Zionists and the Palestinian groups is much harsher, there isn't much room for understanding. Oh, and October 7, only 2 Jewish panels mentioned October 7 or October, and 1 anti-Zionist mentioned it. Henry mentioned no introspection. There were a couple panels that have to do with traditions and spirit work and spiritualism. Jessica Jacobs part of that, that really steer away from any politics. But I don't see any introspection in terms, if I understand, in terms of why did this happen? What are the gray areas? It's not black and white, perhaps. It's not, there's no room for anyone who somewhere both loves Israel and is a Zionist, wants them to exist, but is also upset with certain things happening. There's no room, no middle ground. And that's what I found. I hope that was helpful, Lynn.
Yes, extremely helpful. And in fact, I mean, one question I have hearing what you said is there's a panel that what critiques the weaponization of anti-Semitism. Is that all about?
That has to do with the Holocaust. And I have to pull it out, but it basically is about using the memory of the Holocaust to weaponize and to allow for, permit whatever's happening now.
Yeah, that sounds like it's not fair to point out that some writer might be anti-Semitic, like that anti-Semitism is allowed and it shouldn't be disallowed because am I getting that or not?
Yeah, this is the group. This is one of the group that I put a big question mark next to. I said, that doesn't sound, it's a Jewish panel, not Jewish Book Council. And it's not exactly the 2 clearly anti-Zionist panels, but it has very questionable language that
Okay.
seems to be inflammatory or strident.
Okay, thanks. Catherine, I see that you raised your hand. Can you speak to this?
Yes, first of all, I haven't looked at the programs for the AWP or the other organizations you're talking about, but I've looked at the programs for the academic conferences, the Modern Language Association and the Association for Jewish Studies, although I haven't gone to anything at all this year. But I think not to explicate, but certainly not to take a stand. I think that the weaponization, that phrase weaponization of anti-Semitism refers to, from what I understand from conversations I've witnessed in other panels, I think it refers to the things that the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and other organizations have done with publicity relating to some of the problematic things that have happened on the campuses, on college and university campuses recently. And I think it refers to a kind of right-wing or right-leaning kind of Jewish organization. Now, I am not defending that phrase, and I have real problems. I agree with you, Amy, very much that this whole thing polarizes the situation, simplifies, makes erases gray areas completely, and but I think that's what that phrase refers to.
Thank you. So Amy, you're encouraged to find more Jewish panels and more Jewish oriented panels? Is that one of the positives?
Yes, I know Henry was there at 2024 and I was not, but from what I'm hearing about 2024, I feel like there's more of a balance. And just to respond to Catherine, it says we invite audiences to consider alternatives to militarized responses to genocidal histories. How does literature honor or mourn? And that's actually more the language.
None of that language is like very academic gobbledygook to me.
Weaponized to justify Israeli occupation of Palestine. Okay, that's not.
That's clear.
Yeah, that's clear. Yes, that's clear.
But some of that academic gobbledygook was a hegemonic, the hegemonic tendencies in the novel, this essay in Poets and Writers. So
That's I hope I mean this wasn't exactly computerized statistics. I sat in trying to do my qualitative research.
Oh my goodness.
And I was laughing.
Can you share some more? Are there some more details that you want to share?
I was thinking how my daughter would say, "You can do that on the computer now, Mom." There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Jewish Book Council, and let's see, hostility to Jewish voices is once, rich tradition is once, understanding is once, but weaponization, 1, 2, 3. I mean, there were more of those words. Weaponization. Let's see. Yeah, no, I think I pretty much covered. Basically, I was looking at how many times words like hostility, weaponization, genocide was used versus the words like joy, rich tradition, understanding, multiplicity, spiritual, and mystic. So I was just suggesting that there were clearly the clear language was either the anti-Zionist panels or the
Mhm.
descriptions of the Palestinian Armenian combination. Yeah,
Thank you.
and that the language was softer
Mhm.
on the clearly Jewish panels.
Okay, thank you. Amy, I see that Henry has his hand up. Henry?
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for that, Amy. I think I feel so activated right now, and I'm so glad I'm not going to LA this year because I don't think I'd probably get arrested. The idea that the Holocaust is an excuse for a genocide is something that's been going around on the internet. I have never once heard a Jew say that or a Jewish organization say anything like that. In fact, it is antithetical to Jewish thinking. It is not okay for anybody to commit a genocide in Jewish thinking. It is an underhanded way that the pro-Hamas group is trying to actively devalue the Holocaust. They are saying it is not a remarkable or exceptional situation, and this is part of their way of reframing it as it was just something just like these other things, no worse at all. And what the Jews are doing now is equivalent to the Holocaust.
Mm.
I don't know about you. I haven't seen people lined up to go into gas chambers or being lined up against ditches and shot. But that's the thinking. It's pure propaganda, and it disgusts me that a group, I think you said it was a Jewish group, is propagating these kinds of lies,
Yes,
these kinds of
Jewish.
lies.
Yeah.
It really disgusts me, and I probably wouldn't be able to hold back. So good thing I'm not going. But thank you for bringing that to our attention, and I'm really disappointed with AWP for allowing this to go forward.
Yeah.
Much more so than any actual Palestinian event. This bothers me much more.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you. And Catherine, I see you have your hand up.
One small comment. Henry, I completely agree with you that it's horrendous, and you articulated what I feel very well. But I have heard and seen online in discussions Jewish left-leaning people use that phrase to criticize like the ADL, that saying that they are weaponizing the Holocaust, and it's unspeakable. What can I say?
Well, we have to remember that the Jewish kingdoms have been destroyed several times, and typically by Jewish infighting, not by outsiders.
Okay, well, moving on to still other distressing things. So magazines serving the mainstream writing community are filled with pro-Gaza and anti-Israel poems and essays. You can't read an online journal or open a magazine these days without encountering droves of these poems. But again, you'll have a very hard time finding poems sympathetic to Israel. And a good number of magazines explicitly call for submissions of pro-Gaza, non-Zionist work. So clearly, in the literary world, the pro-Palestinian work is privileged and the pro-Israel work is dispreferred or even banned. More examples of this: the magazine Agni, that's named after a god, comes out of Boston University, openly hostile to Israel, includes the dispatches from Palestine section and a dispatches from Ukraine section, but no dispatches from Israel section. And in response to the October 7th rampage, they ran a statement that says that they acknowledged that October 7th happened, but they said, we refuse any response to their deaths, I mean the deaths of the people in Israel, that justifies violence with more violence. So Israel should not fight back against those who seek to destroy it. Literary Hub, again, relentlessly anti-Israel. Poem a Day, a blog from the Academy of American Poets, regularly publishes anti-Israel poems, but I've seen none sympathetic to Israel or condemnatory of October 7th. And continuing with the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day blog, they recently published a poem by the anti-Zionist Jewish poet and translator Amiel Alkalai entitled My Apologies. This is in December. And in his remarks about his poem, My Apologies, he speaks about the ongoing genocide in Gaza and Palestine. So again, people all over the place are accepting as a genocide. These are horrendous war deaths. They're mass war deaths. They're terrible, but it's not an intentional genocide. But this word is being picked up and used as though it's just accepted. So then we come to the controversy facing PEN America. PEN is poets, essayists, and novelists, and this is a very, very distinguished organization that promotes the rights of writers, works to give silenced writers and persecuted writers support and give them a say, and they also award some very important literary prizes. So under pressure from authors critical of PEN America's stance protecting free expression of all voices, and that was the word that got them in trouble, all voices, because that meant to include pro-Israel voices. PEN America canceled its 2024 Literary Awards ceremony. Again, this speaks to the tense and hostile climate and spirit of exclusion that aims to shut out Jewish voices and pays no mind at all to the wide range of voices in Israeli politics and the complex situation that Israel faces. And when one thinks of DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the inclusion part doesn't really refer to Jews. It's exclusion. Several writers have published major essays on the situation facing Jewish writers post-October 7th. These include Maxim D. Schreier's pieces in Tablet. One of them is called The Silencing of the Jewish Poet, and the other one is called Poetry After October 7th. James Kirchick's essay in the New York Times, A Chill Has Fallen Over Jews in Publishing, and the meticulous research done by Erica Dreyfus about the publishing situation. Another magazine that gives me tsuris, for a variety of reasons, is the Massachusetts Review, which takes a militantly pro-Palestinian position. For example, this winter, Massachusetts Review published a special issue, The View from Gaza. But the Massachusetts Review gives me tsuris because I love the Massachusetts Review, and they have published me, and they published one of my essays, and Jim Hicks, the now retired editor-in-chief and the head anti-Israel guy, personally and lovingly, expertly edited my essay, which was called Dr. Ria Meet Dr. Fauci. It had to do with teaching Camus' The Plague during COVID. But we have big news from Henry Israeli, because the Massachusetts Review recently published a remarkable poem about Jewish identity by Henry, and he is here with us, and he's going to read Escape Artists and share the excellent breaking news. So, Henry?
Thanks, Lynn. Didn't mean it. So quite a buildup. Yeah, I just want to make clear that I've never written about October 7th, and I've never written about the Palestinian Israeli conflict ever. Not because I don't think it's worthy of being written about, but because it's just not my wheelhouse, so to speak. I don't feel like I'm the one who should be writing about that. I'm not in any way an expert, and it makes me a little crazy that everyone seems to think they're an expert on Palestine, Israel, without actually understanding what's going on. And even as much as I know, I don't know enough to write about it. So all these experts have been experts in quotation marks are filling our poetry journals these days, you know, it's especially when it's not someone who's directly involved in the conflict, as in an Israeli or a Palestinian who is directly involved. It does seem a little bit what's the word? Unearned, I guess.
Mhm.
Anyhow, so I was lucky enough to have a poem accepted in the Massachusetts Review. It was accepted before October 7th, and it is about Jewish identity. But the interesting thing, I think, is that it actually took on some new meaning after October 7th. It became all of a sudden more pertinent after October 7th, and it was published, of course, after October 7th, but it was not, but it was accepted beforehand. I have no idea if it would be accepted there now or after October 7th. If anything, perhaps just my name itself would be like touching hot coal for them. So again, I'm pleased. I'm going to read the poem to you, and I'm really pleased that thanks to Terrence Winch for republishing it in the Best American Poetry this year. So there will be some nice. There's going to be at least some Jewish content in that. We'll see what else is in it, but hopefully, but at least thank you to Terrence Winch for recognizing it. And as just a prelude. It's really about it's called Escape Artists, and it's about how every Jew has a plan to hide or escape, whether it's physically or their Jewish identity. There's a wide spectrum, whether it's tucking in a pendant, or changing one's name, or avoiding parts of college campuses, or actually literally having to pack up and leave in the middle of the night. From thank God not our country, but other countries. It's from a collection in progress, and as I wrote, this poem addresses the different layers of escaping, and Harry Houdini seemed like the perfect conduit for me to carry that complexity. So here's the poem, called, again, Escape Artists. Who remembers Tony Curtis as Harry Houdini, immersing himself upside down in a tank of water in a straitjacket with a bundle of chains wrapped around his chest, only to emerge mere minutes later to take a bow? The trick was there was no trick, just skill and a hidden key. In his mouth, I think, although my memory of it is hazy. My father had to cover himself in leaves and snow to blend into the forest ground, which was his bed for over a year. His uncle once lay dead still beneath a plank under a bale of hay in his Polish girlfriend's barn, and when the bayonet pierced his shoulder through straw and board, kept completely silent. What Jew hasn't at one time or another had to become an escape artist? Harry Houdini, born Eric Weiss, son of Rabbi Meir Weiss, years later dropped the Z to sound less Jewish upon coming to America from Budapest. Bernard Schwartz vanished behind Tony Curtis and starred in over 100 films, including Houdini in 1953, which ends with Harry pulled from a water tank, dying from a ruptured appendix, promising his wife, "If there's any way, I'll come back," because even he couldn't disappear forever. Thanks, Lynn, for inviting me.
That poem gives me shivers, Henry. So beautiful, and Yasha Koach. This also speaks to the fact that Jews today, they're hiding their identity, but also they're self-censoring. They're not writing about contentious, scary issues that they'll catch flack for. So they're self-silencing and self-censoring.
Lynn,
But yes,
I would just wanted to piggyback for a second. That's with AWP,
Mhm.
there were no Jewish panels or readings that just was clear and direct about any of this, except for the anti-Zionists. So
Mhm.
yeah, I just wanted to mention that's what I felt when I read the panels.
In order to be heard as a Jew, you have to kind of sidestep the most.
That's what I sense. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
So on that topic, In major magazines, the only poems being published by Jews seem to be, I think this is weird, safe poems about the Holocaust, so far distant from the current crisis. Some of them by non-Jewish writers, and some of them, extremely moving. Poems against anti-Semitism, such as this again by Bob Hickok, which appeared in Rattle. And of course, poems by anti-Israel Jews. If you're Jewish, that's a great way to get published. It may be out there, but I cannot recall a poem addressing October 7th from the Jewish point of view in a wide circulation American literary magazine. But Jewish poets are addressing the topic. So Lisa Grunberger, let's hear from you. You published a poem, very powerful poem called A Psalm for My Uncle, and this appears in Iron Words, Israel War Stories. So, Lisa, can you share that poem?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lynn. I'm still also so moved by Henry's poem, and thank you for doing this. So I just have a few caveats. I mean, we know this, we're all poets and writers, but this is emotionally true. I have a Uncle Yosele, but I took a lot of poetic license with it as well. My mother's sister, my Aunt Devora, was one of the founding members of Kibbutz Be'eri, and she was one of the pioneers who settled there. And so I spent most of my summers at Kibbutz Be'eri with my cousins, playing and know the land and know the people. And my cousins were still there. They all survived. And my uncle Yosele, I was happy to hear, is 89 and he is alive and survived it, but he was there. And so after I spoke to him and my cousins, I wrote this. And so I took some poetic license. So here it is, a psalm from my uncle. Uncle Yosele, may you rest peacefully outside Tel Aviv in the makeshift hospital where cousin Bati watches over you. She told me how you hid under a car for 2 days without water, how you saw your son Ron massacred holding the hand of his daughter, Sarah. Bati said you were shaking when they found you, your 87-year-old body always so thin, shaking and crying for Hayeladim, Hayeladim. You helped raise on Kibbutz Be'eri, where you met your bride, my mother's sister, Devora, who died last year. Oh, Yosele, how I remember picking oranges with you, pitting avocados on our visits to Israel when I was a child. You showed me your work at the printing press, gave me a tour of the land. We shared one bottle of water. And here is where our children learn and play. And here is where I was married beneath this tree. A picture of you and I in blonde pigtails walking hand in hand through the orange grove that Ron took with the Nikon my mother Rachel brought him. Your precious boy shot dead by terrorists. Your granddaughter in the room next to yours, her body blanketed with shrapnel. Oh, Yosele, dear uncle, the last left of your generation, dear gentle printer, who always smelled of ink and oranges, holy gentle scents. I can't stop crying as we are divided. Let the clouds carry my message. I'm weeping here in the distant ruins. The place doesn't look the same on the news. It's not the place you came to.
Lisa, thank you. That poem just squeezes my soul. Thank you so much for writing that.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Thank
Now,
you.
yeah, it's so brave, and I'm so glad it was published and people can read it online. I mean, I have also written some poems about the October 7th, and I'd like to read one of them. It's not yet published, and it's called Cassandra's, and it's about the spotter girls stationed at the border who looked on surveillance monitors and binoculars and stuff. And so this is called Cassandra's. The women spotters stationed at the border, staring at their screens, must have looked with horror when the surveillance cameras showed on the other side of the fence the stopwatch runs, the practice takedown of a tank, the drills with vans and motorbikes, men standing in groups as if at briefings. The spotters filed their reports and warned their commanders, but like the prophetess of Troy, they were doomed to be ignored. Those Cassandras in the operations rooms were among the first to be slaughtered and kidnapped that Black Saturday when knives and fire broke across the border. And I did base that on some reportage. Thank you. In Haaretz. There was a very long article in Haaretz explaining exactly what these border spotters did and what they saw and how they were ignored. Unhappily, the 4 girls who were released yesterday were the spotter girls, but some of them were also, many were killed. And I think, Henry, did you have your hand up?
I did, because I just wanted to make sure that it's mentioned that while we American Jews can hide and get published as long as we don't touch the hot button, Israeli Jews don't have that opportunity. That Israeli poets and writers are being rejected and canceled even when their poems are pro-Palestinian. It does not matter. They are simply considered enemies just because they have a passport that says Israel.
Yeah, they are being published in Israel, but not outside of
No,
Israel.
correct, not in America.
So it's just on that topic, I have my next section actually that says that one of the saddest and most hurtful movements today is the boycott of Israeli cultural institutions. Over 1,000 authors and book industry people are pledging not to work with any publishers, festivals, or publications that they claim, quote, are complicit in violating Palestinian rights. So what do you say when some of your favorite and beloved authors, such as Sally Rooney, Rachel Kushner, Percival Everett, Juno Diaz, Jessamine Ward, Jonathan Lethem, and Gia Tolentino, among others, sign on to this? As a counter to this, a new effort called Creative Community for Peace published a letter protesting the cultural boycott of Israel and Jewish and pro-Israel writers. Some of the people who signed the letter include Bernard-Henri Lévy, Harlan Coben, Sir Simon Schama, Cynthia Ozick, and interestingly, Ozzy Osbourne. With all the protest against book banning, it is ironic indeed. By protest, you guys may know this, but when schools and community groups say, no, you should not touch The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, you should not have The Diary of Anne Frank in your shelves and things like that. There's this anti-book banning movement that's very laudable, very important. But in this climate of, opposing book banning, it's ironic to see ads for pro-Israel books rejected by publications. A case in point is Shelf Awareness's rejection of an ad for Bernard-Henri Lévy's new work, Israel Alone. Shelf Awareness is a trade publication for publishing professionals. Another example of this is the plight facing Yardena Schwartz. On the Facebook site Jewish Binders, she protests that Amazon and Meta have repeatedly rejected ads for her book, Ghosts of a Holy War, the 1929 massacre in Palestine. I don't know if this issue has been resolved or not, but it's something that I came across. And then you can also talk about poetry readings where many of the poets announced their position, anti-Israel, pro-Palestine, fine, and then sometimes for humanitarian reasons, and they call for donations to aid organizations, and then sometimes it's just militantly anti-Israel. As with Creative Community for Peace, Jewish and pro-Israeli editors and publishers are creating new homes for Jewish poets and poetry, not always relating to Israel, but certainly to Jewish voices. So at this point, if they're so inclined, Debbie, Catherine, and Renee, could you speak a little bit about Nashim and your special supplement?
Sure. I guess Renee is gesturing that I should speak and Debbie is nodding, so I'll do my best. So Nashim, which is the Hebrew word for women, is a longstanding Debbie and Renee, please correct me if I get it wrong, but a longstanding academic journal for scholarship about Jewish women and Jewish culture. And many of the authors are women, but not all, for sure. Did I get that right so far? When was it?
And gender.
And
Gender
gender.
study.
Yes, gender. Yes, of course. Jeez.
Women and gender.
Women and gender. Yes, it doesn't. Yes, thank you. And was it a year ago? You, Debbie and Renee, invited me. I've been the poetry editor again for a number of years. I have no memory of time anymore post COVID. But I've been the poetry editor for a number of years, and Debbie and Renee, who are the editors of Nashim, invited me to put together a special poetry supplement of poems about October 7th and the aftermath. So I invited a friend and fellow poet and translator, Lisa, who lives in Jerusalem, Lisa Katz, to co-edit with me. And we have gathered about some 80 submissions, if I count right. And we are still in process of getting the selections clear and organizing the issue. I guess there's two things I want to say. One is that there's a variety of poets and poems, a lot of translations into English of Hebrew poems, that many of which were published in the Israeli press over the past year and a half. Honestly, those poems, the Hebrew poems translated into English, really have been, I think I didn't count, and I guess I have to. We really are still very in coate in a way, but I think those are the poems that have risen to the top, and it's partly because I think they're written by people who are there, who are living in Israel, and experiencing experienced the events and are experiencing the aftermath in very direct ways. And Henry, when you mentioned that that you haven't written about this particular subject because it's just not in your wheelhouse. I understand this and feel it myself, that although I am obsessed, I have been obsessed with with the media representations and then hearing personal accounts from people I know who are involved, whether it's mothers or fathers of young men, mostly young men who are soldiers who are sent to the front in one way or another, or people who I know whose families or friends were directly hit by the October 7th attacks. I feel in a way, I mean, despite my obsessions and my, I guess, knowledge from a distance, I feel sort of muted, tongue-tied about how to respond, how to say anything myself that is meaningful in a public way. On the other hand, as we've been editing, I noticed, and the poems that we're that we've read, that were submitted, come from a lot of different points of view, politically, religiously, nationally. And there are some very wonderful poems in English as well, I have to say. But what I noticed was that there was an absolute absence of any poems submitted to us about the rapes, the violence against women that were perpetrated very deliberately and very publicly on October 7th. I happen to have a daughter my daughter works for an organization that is involved with two organizations that have been addressing this violence against sexual violence against women. One is Jewish Women International, and the other with as a connected organization is called I Believe Israeli Women. Jewish Women International is a long-standing organization, cultural, social organization. I Believe Israeli Women is an organization that came into being after October 7th and after the shocking silence in our world of acknowledging what happened to the women who happened to be in the line of action of the terrorists, the Hamas terrorists on that date. And so anyway, I was shocked at the absence of anybody dealing with the rapes and the other atrocities, sexual atrocities. I tried to write a poem myself, a short poem on that topic, and I actually have not even shown it to anybody, and I don't think I'm going to read it to you because it's not there yet. But it's I just think that we have to somehow find a poem. Somebody has to write a poem that is that confronts these facts. So I don't know. I think I should be quiet now.
Well, Catherine, thank you for that. And it's interesting that you come across no poems about the rapes.
Yeah.
Now, on the Israeli side, I did attend a Zoom by Rachel Korazim, in which many poems by Israeli poets writing in Hebrew were translated real quick in order to get onto her Zoom. And they were about grief over loved ones. And just like you said, and worries about their sons on the front. And so that's very much part of that. Amy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, you know, what you're saying is vital in terms of what's happened in Israel. But I've worked on a lot of poems that are about rape as a weapon internationally. And it somehow we are women and rape during war is not, it's not a priority. And I'm really glad you mentioned it because some of the poems will be in my new book, but it's just that it's important that we look at rape as a very real weapon that is not addressed.
Yeah. Thank you. It's so hard in art to write about something so excruciating and gory and sexual.
Well, Yeats, as my friend Lisa, when I brought this up in discussion with Lisa Katz, my co-editor on this special section, and Renee and Debbie, Lisa pointed out, well, maybe, I don't know if Renee and Debbie were part, I can't untangle all the threads. I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but Lisa said something about Yeats's famous poem, Leda and the Swan, which is a kind of aestheticization, through mythology of the rape of a woman, and at the end of that poem, I reread the poem. I started getting so angry at Yeats, whom of course I, have idolized my whole career. But at the end of that poem, he ends the poem by saying, did she gain wisdom and knowledge by being raped by Zeus in the guise of the swan? And I mean, yeah, Amy, yeah.
Yeah, as a date rape victim who finally could talk about it many, many years later in these new poems, I'm furious. And I feel like what we're looking at might be, there's lots of anthologies about sexual abuse and there should be, but I think this is so important. I'm feeling like what you're talking about is some kind of folio or anthology about women who, like the Israeli women who are raped during this violence, national violence or terroristic violence or wars. I don't know.
Yeah. There was a screening in Philadelphia of the film that Sheryl Sandberg produced and actually was the main speaker, interlocutor in. It's called Screams Before Silence, and it's a very powerful. It was excruciating to watch, but it's not. It's a film that does not show the violence visually, but she interviews survivors and also the medical people and the military people who came into the kibbutzim and the site of the Nova Festival afterwards, recovering survivors and bodies. And it's worth watching if you can, because it acknowledges the experiences that women went through during this time. So
Thank you.
there's comments coming in the chat. I actually find chat really distracting.
Oh, I didn't even look at him.
So somebody just wrote, I always read that poems, it's jumbled up on my screen, poems as that something message violence, that violence begets violence. Whoever wrote that, maybe you want to just say it coherently.
It's me. I don't want to get into an academic discussion over the meaning of the poem, but I always felt like the product of the rape would lead to the destruction of Troy, and it was I never read it as the rape as a positive in my reading. That's all. But we don't have. I was just a message just to you, not to.
Let's have coffee.
For a group discussion.
Henry, let's have coffee and we can read the poem together and argue
okay. About it. No, it's okay. I respect your opinion as well.
This is. I love hearing all these views and everyone sharing deep literary insights about things. So I just want to list some things on the positive here, because in response to being excluded and banned and censored by mainstream literary magazines, editors have created some new Jewish magazines in response to October 7th. So I'm going to read the titles of some of these, and they may be publishing poems about October 7, or they may be publishing poems about Jewish life, but here are some of the new ones. The Green Golem, Trua, Vita Poetica, Iron Words, Israel War Stories, the New Review, new as in so new, that kind of new, Judith Magazine, and Balagan, which is an Israel-based Jewish magazine. And there have always been Jewish magazines that publish poetry and other genres. So these include Minyan, Shirim, Lilith, Tikkun, Paper Brigade, Moment, Ritual Well, a wonderful Reconstructionist organization that has classes and also publishes when it comes up certain Jewish spiritual poems. Elon Note Review, English language magazine coming out of Israel. The Duranda Review from the UK. Of the Book, the UK. Poetica, the Jewish Journal, the Jewish Writing Project, the Jewish Women's Archive, of course, the Nashim Supplement. And one thing that troubled me a lot was that there's a magazine called Lily Poetry Review, and they put out a call in February of 2024 for a special issue called Riven, inviting Jewish and Palestinian responses to the crisis, but they quickly canceled the project a few weeks later. One can surmise why, I do not know why, but that kind of broke my heart. And I know a lot of people have more questions and comments. And Catherine, you have your hand up?
I'm sorry to keep interjecting here, but would you, Lynn, would you be willing to put that list of those journals together and email them to all of us? And post it somewhere, but I would appreciate getting it by email.
Okay, sure.
And the second thing is that Nashim has always, since Debbie and Renee brought me on board, it's been publishing poems. Most of the time, we don't get very many submissions, and I don't have much work to do. So not in every issue, but I would encourage people to submit to Nashim. It's gender and women oriented, the topics. So that would be helpful to, self-select, but put us on your list as well, not just the poetry supplement.
Well, how do people submit generally to Nashim? By
Renee,
direct email?
Renee or Debbie, please.
Just use the Nashim address. Nashim strudel Schechter SCHECHTER .ac.il. I think Lynn, you have our address, so you could actually add that to the list if you email a list.
Right, can you type that out in the chat so I can write it down?
Yeah, but it's you've been corresponding with us, so
Oh, all right.
So
Okay.
yeah, you have the address.
All right.
Here,
All right. Okay. Yeah, I can develop that. Thank you. So other comments, questions? Oh, here. Okay, Catherine just posted it in the chat as well, so that everybody can see it like instantly.
Proofread it though to make Debbie, please proofread it to make sure I actually
Yeah,
type it
I
properly.
just put it into and oh, you forgot the L at the end, actually. So use the address that I wrote is correct.
Okay.
It comes to me actually, and then
Oh, you're right.
I forward things to whoever needs to.
Okay, it goes right to Debbie. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. Nashim at schechter.ac.il. Okay. Great.
Yeah, because we're in Israel.
Yes, of course.
But the journal is published by Indiana University Press, right?
And yes, and our co-publisher, and this definitely ought to be said here, is the Hadassah Brandeis Institute, which is at Brandeis.
Okay. So it's published by the Indiana University Press and Hadassah what?
Well, they're a co-sponsor. Yeah.
It's sponsored by the Schechter Institute, where I'm a professor, and the Schechter Institute of Jewish Studies, and that's basically the real home. The HBI pays for half of it and shows everybody the great work that we've done.
Okay.
There are co-sponsors.
And we publish it with Indiana University Press.
Okay. Wonderful. And I guess if we went on the Nashim site, we'd see all those sponsors and things.
Yeah, well, yeah, there isn't so much of a Nashim site, but you can see,
Okay.
we have a page on the Indiana University Press
Okay.
site. That's probably the best way to find information about us.
I have
Right.
to say, I have to say that it was hard. I wanted to submit something for that folio, and I honestly couldn't find where to submit to. You don't have a very big presence on the internet. It's not, it was like hidden. It was, I couldn't find it. I remember getting the call from someplace that last year, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out, like I couldn't even find the site.
Well, as I said, we haven't got much of a website. You can, but you can find our material online. I do it. I routinely do it all the time.
Yeah.
But thanks for letting me know. Thanks for letting us
Yeah.
know. We'll work on that.
Yeah, it was hard, but I look forward to looking at it more. Yeah.
So I want to say thank you to everyone. This has been enriching, marvelous, disturbing. I want to say go Eagles because there's an important football game that's going to happen today in Philadelphia. And you have to like say go Eagles, so go Eagles. And Amy, I'd like to close with a poem of peaceful spirituality. And could you read It Is Enough for us?
Yes, thank you so much. It's this was after October 7th, like most of us. I really became depressed and feeling hopeless and isolated. And I was doing the very Jewish activity of grappling with is there a God? And then I went to a Yetzirah conference and last June and found from one of the prompts this poem. Oh, and I should mention that it mentions the heart. I had a broken heart syndrome and some heart failure, which is fine now. It is enough. I thought I stopped believing a long time ago, told myself there is no one, only disasters like wars or floods and heartbreak. But my damaged heart refuses to listen, still drums away a ruffled grouse's deep thumping, its wings sailing toward hope sound. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe there are miracles, ones I barely recognize, like this stubborn heart, like the orchid someone left at my doorstep weeks after sitting my plague-lonely Shiva. How it keeps me blooming, and how today I found a fig bush in a forgotten garden.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Listening.
And thank you all for being here and for having such important things to say. And Jerry and Abraham can't be here today, but Jerry and Abraham, I mean, you made it all happen, and thank you so much. And I might see some of you next month when I read an interesting story from my collection.
And goodbye, New Hope.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
It's an important topic. It's good to hear it from a different perspective.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much, Lynn.
Thank
Yeah.
you,
Thank you,
Lynn.
guys. You're welcome.
you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank